So let's dive right in, Mr. Scott Leese.
What's up,
Uh,
man? How are you?
Doing fantastic, and I'm thrilled that you're here. Because for those of you who don't know Scott, I don't know what rock you've been hiding under, but Scott is someone who is near dear to my heart. For those of you who don't know, he was a coach of mine for a while. I've devoured his books that he's put out there. I was in his Patreon group when he had one. Check out his new community that he's putting out. But he's an absolute legend, multiple time VP of sales and like multiple time consultant advisor to like some of the fastest, hottest growing startups in the world. So I know that's a humble intro, Scott.
Jeez, yeah. I don't know if anybody's watching this, but I'm beat red right now. Oh, appreciate that.
But I'd love to just start at the beginning. Like, tell us a little bit about your journey, especially the one that you outlined in your first book. I think it's a very, really powerful story for those who aren't familiar with it, of like how you ended up going into the sales route that you ended up going into.
Yeah, the short version is I got started really late in my life and career. I actually never had a job until I was about 27 years old that had anything to do with a career or anything like that. I mean, I had gotten paid to coach sports or play or things like that, and a summer job type of thing, cleaning pools, random things. Never really had a job until I was 27. Part of the reason is right before my 23rd birthday, I fell extremely ill and spent the better part of the next 4 years primarily in the hospital fighting for my life, and had a bunch of life-threatening illnesses, autoimmune diseases, cancer scare. I've had 9 major surgeries, 4 life-saving abdominal surgeries. 2 of them were like emergency life-saving surgeries. And after all that, I had to kick off of pain medicine and opioids that I'd been sucking down in the hospital for 4 years. So, it was a long, painful road to get out from under that health scare. And then I had to figure out what the hell I was going to do with my life. I had studied religion and psychology as an undergrad, had a master's degree in learning, learning theory, instructional technology, stuff like that. And in my mind, I had forgotten all of it, and it wasn't relevant anymore, and I didn't know what to do. And I had a college tennis teammate who reached out to me and was like, "You should try sales. You don't have to have any experience. You can make lots of money. You're pretty, convincing. You've got leadership. Like, you might be good at sales." And so that was how I got started, man. I ended up taking an entry level inside sales job in the Bay Area, and off I went.
And I think it was an Addicted to the Process. You tell a story about one of your early days in the role where things weren't going well. And you were still, I think it sounded like, in the office making dials, and you're like, you know what? I can still call Hawaii.
Yeah, that story is about the very first deal I ever closed. So I got this job, and it was, fairly transactional sale, but it was old school, like make 100 and something calls per day, right? I got hired with like 20 people. It was the first 20 people to sell real estate, like lead generation services, basically. Okay, it was a huge class. They had never proven this out before. I would never recommend you start with by hiring 20 people, but I guess they had money to burn. Um, by that Friday of the first week, I was the last person that either hadn't quit or already closed a deal. The last one. And I remember thinking, I'm going to get fired today for sure. Like, it's been 5 days. I haven't closed a deal. This is a disaster, right? I'm like, I'm just going to stay, and maybe they won't fire me. So they'll see me just at my desk working, right? And so I pivoted at the end of the day to take advantage of the time zones. I think I ordered a pizza and like grabbed some beers from downstairs, and I started calling Hawaii, and it was at 9:30 Pacific time at night. And I ended up getting this like one call close on this deal in Hawaii. And I looked around, and the office was dark as hell. There was nobody else there. And I was like, whoa, what is this feeling? And I think I got addicted to that rush right then and there. But it also cemented for me at that point in time in my life, the only reason that sale happened is because I was out working everybody.
That's right.
And that became my only advantage back then. I felt like I could control my effort. I could control what time I showed up, what time I left, how much I got done during each day. And so I just like obsessively like poured myself into that job and getting good at it. And luckily for me, that was the last period where I really struggled.
That's awesome. And I want the audience to kind of really take that in, that the thing you can control is what you poured all your effort into. Because so often we want to look at external things and say, like, I can't control my situation and give up. But here's a great example of that. And you still live that, I mean, whether it's your LinkedIn brand, the multiple product offerings you put out as what seems like a solo business person, all the accolades you've built for yourself over the years, how do you still show up in that way today with what you're doing?
Well, when you go through traumatic things and have a brush with, mortality or whatever you want to call it, um, I think most people come out changed. And I came out with an increased, heightened sense of urgency and kind of an appreciation for the limited amount of time we have, and this idea that everything can be taken away from me at any given time, and that it probably will, because my health stuff is ongoing, ever present. So I kind of just came out, shot out of a cannon, man. And I'm like, I got to get this stuff done. I got to make up for lost time. I'm not going to waste or squander any opportunities while I'm still feeling good and feeling okay. And I have a difficult time doing nothing. And so I want to be feeling productive. And that production can take a lot of different forms. It can be me helping other people. It can be me starting a new business. It could be me, I don't know, surfing, going on trips. I'm not going to just like sit down and veg out and eat potato chips and do nothing. I want to stay moving, and I'm, if I make $1 today, I want to figure out how to make $2 tomorrow. I'm just kind of wired that way. But I certainly think that all of that got dialed all the way up to 10 because of my
Mm-hmm.
my health, stuff, and the perspective that it gave me.
And, if you were talking to your younger self and looking back at what you've learned over the years, what would be some of the things that, as you started to climb that promotion path, that you eventually took on leadership roles, multiple VP roles, you had a few successful exits, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, what would be some of the things your wiser self today would tell your younger self then, to be able to also infuse that hard work with a little bit of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, I made a million mistakes. I have one real bad blip on my resume where I was only there for like 8 months. I did a terrible job of vetting the company and the opportunity, so that set me back. Some of the gigs that I took early on, I would say never really had the potential to be like $1 billion, game changing, life changing kind of opportunities. I was
Mm.
very focused just on like, what's my salary and how much commission I could make. And I wasn't thinking about the big picture in terms of, you know, it takes just as much energy and effort to scale a $100 million business as $1 billion business. I know now because I've done both, but I
Mm.
didn't know that then. So I think I would have taken a couple bigger swings. I also would have cared more and started networking a lot sooner. I really, I only got started networking and quote unquote building my brand for recruiting purposes. I
Mm.
had offices at some of my gigs in multiple states. So I was sort of running distributed sales teams before it was in vogue. Um, and so I'm like, I need to know people in New York. I need to know people in LA. I need to know people in Chicago and Austin, Colorado, right? So I started growing my network because of that. But that was like halfway into my career, man. And if I really wish I would have started doing that, much, much sooner. Um, and I think I would have also started diversifying my income, my streams of income a little sooner, and not relying on, my main gig and expecting it to get me rich. the reality is you could be a VP of sales, be doing really well for yourself, but you're never really going to create wealth.
Mm.
You know, if you do
Mm-hmm.
the math on, I don't know, 1 to 2% that a VP of sales will make at $100 million exit, it's nothing to, you know, laugh at. That's for sure. But you're not really creating wealth. Even $1 billion company, if you're there and you've vested for 4 years, like you're making good change for sure, and that can change your life and the lives of your family. But it took me a really long time to realize, like, you got to do something for yourself eventually if you really want to try to create, you know, a generational change in your life and in your family. And I didn't really realize or understand that stuff. So I probably would have done a little bit more research, talked to a few more, you know, mentors and whatnot, um, a lot sooner, you know.
Those three things are huge. The first one, picking them right, swinging big, that you had mentioned. I think that's hard to do when you're earlier in your career. Do you think that that is true at any level, entry level or
Yes.
frontline manager?
Yes. I mean, you said it's hard to do when you're just getting started. I would argue that's hard to do always.
Hmm.
Always.
Hmm.
I think there's ways to get better at it, but I don't know that you ever really, you know, can bat 1,000 in this
Right.
arena. I know multiple people, Ronen, who you probably also know, that have gone back into you know, sales leadership after taking some time away, vetted the mess out of things, and they're not super happy, and it's not going super well. And you know, I'm like, well, what happened? And they're like, the same old shit, you know. And it's just like, damn, dude, you're 40 something years old. You've been through this 5, 6 times. It's just simply not that easy for a lot of different reasons. You get better at it, I think, so you could have a higher hit rate, but
Hmm.
it's very, very difficult, you know. So is this thing a must have versus a nice to have? Meaning,
Hmm.
does it absolutely power a business or an industry, and
Hmm.
that business or industry cannot function without it? That would be a must have. That would be a platform that I would be more interested in selling than a Google Chrome extension,
Hmm.
which is not a must have to me, right? Um, you look into the leader a little bit more. You talk to people using the product right
Hmm.
now and see if they're happy or not. These are things that, you know, some people don't do early in their career, some people don't do later in their career. And again, you can still do those things, and the freaking ground underneath you can change, man, because
Hmm.
people don't present themselves to be a certain way. And you know, it's hard. It is really,
Yeah.
really hard to pick winners. But it is
Those are good.
probably the best thing you can do. Goes without saying for your career is
Right.
get really good at vetting opportunities.
And those are some great tips. I want to just reemphasize them. Being able to identify, is this a nice to have product or need to have product? Uh, Vetting the leader. If you've got a good leader, there's going to be some signs there that you can probably identify just by talking to him once, talking to people who he manages or she manages, and then also customer interviews. That's an interesting one. Like, what do the customers say? The people using it. One thing that I saw, I got lucky with one pick in my career so far with Security Scorecard. And it was true. Rising tides raise all ships. When you're at a company that's doing really well, everything seems to go well for you as well within your role. Um, but what I saw when I was interviewing there, and I remember walking away from that interview thinking, oh, I got to get in at this one compared to the other companies that I had offers from, one of which actually closed, two of the other three closed down.
Mm,
And Security Scorecard is still pushing for IPO now.
yeah,
But the thing was, their inbound leads, it was insane. They had a like bare bones marketing, but they had a ton of hot inbound leads compared to the last startup I had just come from. And I knew the difference was insane. And so something told me people want this. So
yeah,
the demand is there, which must mean there's something right about this space.
yeah.
And
I mean, that's good intuition on your part, and it goes to show you how close you came to having a very different outcome if you would have took
100%.
one of these other gigs. You know,
I want to go back to the thing you said about networking. You know, you wish you started earlier. You started because you were doing recruiting. What does that even look like for people who are getting started today?
Well, I think people confuse networking these days with building a brand and trying to become some sort of social influencer,
Hmm.
meaning you have to start creating content and doing all these things. No, you don't. What you should do is create a new KPI, a modern day KPI for yourself, which is how many people did I try to connect with on LinkedIn today? And how many new connections did I add today, this week, this month? Because those are now people that you might be able to help one day or that might be able to help you. And you just don't know which one's going to be, uh, so critical, right? And you just systematically do that 365 days a year, add 25 people a day, I think is the max. I think if my math is right, it's like 9,125 new connections you'd have if every one of them said yes. So let's just say half of them say yes. You're going to add 4,500 new connections this year. For somebody who's just getting started, that will absolutely change your business, your career, and your life. For people who are already a decent way, along, that's a pretty good number still. You go from 10,000 to almost 15,000. You just increased by 50% simply by sending out these requests. Keep in mind, this stuff compounds, right?
Hmm.
So the more people you're connecting with, that they're going to start, new people are going to show up and try to connect with you. And then you just engage on other people's content. You don't have to create your own stuff at all. Just engage on other people's content. Start
Hmm.
small and be like, great post, Ronen. I was just thinking about this today. Thanks for sharing. It doesn't have to be this like mind blowing thing and create this huge dialogue. No, you do that enough and people start to see your face or your avatar, your name. They start to recognize it. They start to see who you are, where you work, what you do, all this kind of stuff. And then more people come towards you and you build
Hmm.
up the muscle and strengthen it to a point where hopefully you're performing well at your regular role, first of all. You're adding and growing your network systemically like this. And now you're comfortable and confident and have some sort of audience. Now you can start sharing your own content. And that's how the whole thing just like builds upon itself.
Yeah, that's a great tip for anyone out there who's thinking about getting out on LinkedIn or anywhere else on social to build their brand. You know, start by connecting and engaging with other people first. You know, build that tribe of people who recognize your name by putting out or depositing in their bank account before you withdraw. I think that's something that gets missed a lot. People just think, "Oh, I got to post one a day and I'm good." It's like, not quite.
What's the point of posting if nobody's there to pay attention? I don't get it. And I know that that's slightly different advice than some other folks who talk about this, but I've never understood that. You know,
Yeah.
um, I think it's a mistake, frankly. I mean, I think that when you post and if you don't get reactions, what you're looking for, it can be deflating.
Hmm.
And, that deflation sometimes turns to negativity and turns you off and you lose motivation to keep up with this. Whereas, again, back to what I was saying before about focus on things you control, you 100% control how many connection requests you send today. 100%. You might not control the number of acceptance messages you get, right? But if you send the right type of message, you're going to get some, and then you're growing,
Totally.
and then you feel that growth, you see that growth, right? And you experience it. That provides positive reinforcement, and it kind of motivates you, hopefully, to keep going. So that's where I think people should focus if they haven't gotten started yet at all.
Yeah, those are some great tips. And I want to keep it to one more question and then wrap up with a little bit of the end in mind of as towards what you're working on now with GTM United. But before we get there, um, you've been in leadership and sales leadership, seen plenty of leaders, you coach leaders. What do you think is one of the most common mistakes for like a first time sales development leader who's just starting to transition into that kind of a role? That you advise people on, or something that you see happening all the time that is one of the big no-nos?
Geez, there's so many.
Or feel free to rattle off a few.
Running out of time. Uh, I think the thing I'd say is they don't spend enough time coaching their reps. Frankly, they don't spend enough
Yeah.
time with them, and don't coach them enough. Whether that's because they get overwhelmed with all their new duties, or because they just truly think their team is already great or amazing, or because they told somebody something one time and they expect it to stick. I don't know. Probably some combination of all the above. But the biggest mistake people make is they don't spend enough time with their team. You know, if you were my rep and I'm just moving into the roles, like I need to figure out who you are, man. As a
Yeah.
person, as a
Yeah.
person, I need to know what makes you tick. How am I going to do that without talking to you? You know, I want to learn. Like, okay, Ronen lives in San Diego. He's married. He has little kids. This was his background. This is like what he's pushing for. This is what he wants to be one day. This is what pisses him off. Like, okay, I'm starting to figure out like who this dude is, how I might want to manage him and whatnot. And I'm trying to build a relationship. And if I build a strong relationship, you start to trust me a little bit. And now I can be like, yo, Ronan, your call sucks, dude. We got to fix this. And you'll be like,
Yeah.
okay, that was harsh, but it's coming from a place of love, probably. So let me pay attention to what this guy has to say.
Well,
Right?
Kim Scott's got a great name for that, radical candor. I mean, she talks about it in her bestseller, and I think it's one of the biggest weapons and tools a manager or leader can have in their tool belt, which is like develop relationship to show trust, show the person you care about them, so you can be candid with them
Yeah.
and just say it like it is, because people need feedback to grow, but they won't take your feedback as well if they don't think it comes from a good place.
Yeah, the candor without a relationship is just rude.
Well, she calls it being an asshole, essentially.
Close
Which she
enough.
says is effective, but definitely not as effective.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I know we're just about up on time here. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on today with GTM United.
Yeah, so I think that the premise is that there needs to be a new type of community that not only provides support, coaching, training opportunities, but also provides income opportunity. And it's my thesis that go to market strategies that we've deployed over the years are not working as well anymore. I don't think you can argue it actually that people don't pick up the phone as much, don't reply to as many emails. So I think go to market is dying. And I think go to network is what's coming next. And I think the only way to open up opportunities is by utilizing your network and your brand and doing things like referral selling, partner selling, co-selling, customer led growth, and community led growth. And so getting involved with GTM United gives you the opportunity to network, communicate, find jobs, skill up, all this stuff. But also, what we've done is we've partnered with a number of vendors, and I'm teaching people in the community how to become a referral seller. And so I deploy the entire community into helping my vendors open up accounts. And then they get paid a hefty commission when they do so. So it's a way for you to get paid based on who you know.
That's fascinating and a strong thesis. How can people find you or connect about to learn more about it?
Yeah, I mean, you can connect with me and shoot me a note on LinkedIn. That's easily the best way to get in touch with me. But if you want to check out the community and what we're up to, is gtmunited.com.
Awesome. Well, Scott Leese, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for hopping on.
You're
And
welcome, man.
for everyone tuning in, check out the show notes down below. That's where we'll include things like links to Scott's profile and GTM United as well. And hopefully we can have you back sometime soon.
Happy to, man. It's good to see you.
Likewise.